Ba-da-ba-da-ba-ba. And just like that, we've got worldwide syndication on everything Teams Phone Live here on LinkedIn and YouTube. All right. Welcome,
And
everybody. Oh, go ahead,
we,
Brandon.
we are worldwide. We got Tom Morgan on, who is certainly not in the United States, judging on the dark background behind him.
True. It's
No,
true. It's an apocalypse over here. Like
It's the
it's all gone out.
it's the other side of the pond. What's it, 8 o'clock over there today, Tom? Or right now it's at 8,
Yep.
8 p.m.
Yep.
Here we go.
8
All
p.m.
right.
Absolutely.
Very good. Very good. Well, you blew it already, Brandon. I was going to do this massive sort of,
Hype?
this
My
massive
bad.
hype and massive introduction for Tom, but you blew it already. No, I'm just kidding.
My bad.
Let's do this. So this is episode 37. We're here to talk about some automation and chatbots and AI and the Microsoft ecosystem. Here at Everything Teams Phone Live, we always talk about the productivity gains that you can experience with Microsoft Teams as your phone system. Now we're going to expand that today, and we're going to talk about the larger Microsoft ecosystem, because from an automation perspective, and it may even leak out past the Microsoft automation ecosystem, because I understand you do a lot of cool things with Alexa and Amazon thing, Tom. So we're welcoming here to Everything Teams Phone Live, Tom Morgan, and as Brandon mentioned, he's on the other side of the pond. I think somewhere out in the UK. It's dark, 8 o'clock, and he assures us that he has coffee in his cup and he's ready to go. So, Tom, welcome.
Yeah, and it's not apparently red wine, which kind of
definitely not red wine. Yeah.
caused me to ask the question about the trend of, did you add a splash of Coca-Cola to it?
Which seems barbaric. Why would you do that?
That's my point exactly. Why would you add Coca-Cola?
Unless it makes a very bad red wine.
Maybe.
You know what? A splash to that to some house wine. Maybe I get that. It seems terrible to me, though.
I'm a person who I'm gonna at least try it to say I've tried it. It's like the and I know we're getting way off track, but I don't know if you guys know about the orange juice coffee trend, where you add coffee to your orange juice. That's also a thing.
Are these like
speed up your morning, like the morning routine? Is that
yeah? You get your vitamin C and your caffeine and maybe your colon cleanse all at once.
Well, like mix it all together. Just take it all
I feel like that's like an Instagram challenge. Like, okay, here, drink your orange juice and coffee together. It's like a pepper challenge or what? Ice bucket challenge. What? Like, that seems a bit crazy to me. Orange juice and coffee, and then I'm still on the red wine and Coca-Cola.
I tried it. It's weird. It's not terrible. It's just weird.
Okay.
What I'm going to take away for this, Brandon, is that you are a guy that says yes, and I'm a guy that says no. Why would I do that?
My theory is when you try, because I like to travel, as you, Rick, know. I'm a person who, like, if you're going to be introduced to new customs and social, things that other cultures do that I don't do, I have to at least try it once.
When in Rome, right? Yeah.
Yeah, when in Rome. So,
all right, very good, very good. Well, that's a good intro to talk about all sorts of things, and a variety may be the discussion there, because there's a lot of different applications, a lot of variety that you can use to automate your organization, create some productivity. We were having a discussion today earlier on how to automate a certain process for onboarding customers, as an example, and we look to the Microsoft ecosystem to help us do those things. So that's pretty exciting, pretty near and dear to our hearts. So, Tom, welcome to the show, and let's just hop into it. What's new, Tom? I know you could put out a weekly update, and you talk about the automations, you talk about the Graph API stuff. You are a consummate sort of engineer and architect, software developer on the Teams application, on the Teams ecosystem. So what's new today?
Yeah, so there's a ton of interesting things happening. Obviously, Copilot and AI are like what everyone is talking about right now, and it really feels like, like I wasn't there for that, the back in time, in the old days with, where we had the age of the internet, and that email, the Bill Gates email around, like, everything you do has to have the internet in it now, like, go, like, all to these product teams, go put internet and everything, like, and it really feels like that's where Microsoft are at the moment. It's like, go find the AI and everything and get it in there, and like make sure you're relevant, make sure like you're taking advantage of it, and somewhere that's like, you see it in some places and you're like, yeah, okay, but in some places it's really landing. And one of the really interesting things in my world is the bot framework team, and the Microsoft Teams bot team, which a couple of different teams inside Microsoft, but they've been working on something called the Teams AI library. And the first time I looked at this, I was like, okay, it looks like they've just it's kind of like a sample, right? It looks like they've just taken like, here's a sample of how you would take a bot with a large language model and get going with something. And that's good on one front, but actually the more I dig into it, I've realized it's actually something way more fundamental than that. And if you kind of zoom out for a minute and think about what we have today or 6 months ago with bots and the bot framework, is a whole bunch of individual bots that are very keyword orientated, and they're kind of like they don't have that that sort of secret sauce, if you like, AI that the large language models and the GPTs have brought to the party, really. And so they've completely kind of rethought how that should work. And what they've come up with is this Teams AI library, which is, I think, going to become the new way of writing bots, because it's all about, like, as a developer, you should not spend your time writing these essentially ginormous switch statements for different intents. What you should spend your time doing is writing the business logic for what your thing is doing, and then allow a large language model to like look over that, iterate over that, and then handle how like a user would work with that. And what the team have done with the Teams AI library is sort of melded that with how Microsoft Teams does conversations. So as a developer, you don't have to think about any of that stuff either. So it's really, I think, changing up like how we're going to build Teams bots and Teams experiences, and making them much more integrated with LLMs, but also very much more Copilot friendly as well. This is paving the way for essentially Copilot plugins.
Are they going to be so it seems to me like that's going to really accelerate the deployment of bots just into the normal business landscape. And I say normal business landscape because, you know, everything started with sort of the not the remote worker, but the knowledge worker, right? And it feels to me like now Teams Phone and all the tools are really starting to sink into the broader sort of business ecosystem. And I feel like you're sometimes still far away, but making it easily accessible with, I mean, an AI library, right? To make it simple to deploy. It seems to me like that's going to really accelerate adoption.
Absolutely. And I think one interesting way that is like an unintended positive consequence, I think quite often IT end up being the gatekeepers of a lot of this technology. And like, you can see why, security and compliance and all that kind of stuff. But very often IT don't really fully understand the needs of the business that they're supporting. Like, and that's not meant as a dig as IT, like they're super busy doing their thing, right? But like, it just, because like they just don't have the time to do it, or like whatever, like it's just unmet needs, right? The business has these unmet needs. Right. What's really interesting about the way you'd build out a large language model bot is that actually you don't need to have fully captured all the business needs, because the large language model can figure a lot of that stuff out. So you might find, so there's a great story actually that came from the Teams AI library team. Like, one of their really early prototypes they were making was they just built some business logic to turn some lights on and off, like, and they built a sample app around that. You can go find it, you can download it actually. But they were doing some testing with it, you know, and they were kind of asking this model all the like standard questions, like turn the lights on, turn the lights off. Hey, it's a bit dark in here, and the model will be like, okay, I'm going to turn the lights off for you. And then like one of the engineers came up with like this test case of make the lights flash, and like they hadn't coded that in, but the large language model was like, okay, and just like fired off the commands: lights off, lights on, lights off, lights on, right? And it's like, wow, that's really interesting, because that is an unmet business need, right? That's a thing that's never fully articulated, never comes up through like the business analyst, the IT and stuff like that, but it's a real business need. And I think if large language models can kind of like be that flexible, then I think they could be really, 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 that could be really interesting. Yeah.
And then to your point, Tom, it offloads that deep level work developers need to spend on writing that logic, right? Because now you've added a dynamic component for the code structure that can be flexible to the evolving business requirements.
Right. It allows the developers to really focus on the business logic that is specific to that company, because otherwise we've got all these development teams doing the same thing, writing the interface of how you like send a message in Teams. Like, that's so silly. Like, write it once, have Microsoft write it and look after it, and look at, like manage it. You look after the business logic that is important for your business, and that's really interesting, I think.
See, that makes a ton of sense. That's that does make it so that it is something that the normal business, and again, I say the normal business, I mean, maybe it's the SMB, SME that I'm kind of referring to as the normal business, because typically this technology is kind of kept at an enterprise level or even a mid-market level, right? And you do have the high level IT guys, developers that kind of maintain control of this, but this is so commercialized now, or it's so sort of kind of out there, right? That it's easy for business owners and executives to go, how do we implement something like that? Like that seems like that could solve a lot of business problems. How do we get that right? And so that's excellent. Making it
and actually
really
for those SMEs as well, I think it'll be like, what plugins can we just get for the things we're already using, like the accounting software we already have, or the CRM software.
Well, and I'm going to throw another scenario out there, and you can shoot me down if maybe my thinking is wrong, but would this not also help solve for, let's say you're a third-party consulting company that does development work, so you come in on behalf of the SMB that maybe doesn't have developers, and you're trying to write a structure for their business requirements, and as a third-party contractor, obviously you're going to really struggle to know their business requirements and develop to that. So really what it also does is it brings greater success stories or case studies to the SMB, because now the third-party contractor or vendor can more successfully deploy a solution that's dynamic to their business needs, and they can train that model specific to that customer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is such an unmet, there are so many unmet needs. Like, I've spent some time this week sitting with the customer, and we're quite unusual in that we put in the time to, like, we talk to IT first and we figure out, like, IT are paying us, let's be honest, like, that's the engagement. But we want to go and talk, we want to go and sit with the people on the ground. So we go and sit with the people answering the phones, and we're like, take us through your day, like, what do you do? And it's like, okay, here you go. And it's like, didn't know any of this, like, and you see all these things that are happening in the real world, and it's really interesting. And it's such a grounder, like, you know what I mean? Like, we're up here in IT space,
right,
and we're like 6 months ahead, but actually to come to, like, no, it's still about faxes and emails and people and copying and pasting and spreadsheets and all these things. And it's, it's like, you've got to like consider that before you move forward.
That's from an engagement perspective, that's interesting. So tell us about what you do in your day job, and what it is that you deliver for customers today, because this automation piece is super interesting. So
yeah, so I work for a company called Cloud Interact on their development team, and we do all sorts of things, but we're not purely Microsoft, which is kind of an interesting thing when I talk to people. It's like, well, Tom, you're like 100% Microsoft. What's going on? It's like, I am, but there's other people that are like not 100% Microsoft. So there's a version of me who's like amazing at AWS, and there's a team of people there that are like really good at AWS, and I like dip my toe in and get lost, and then they help me out. And it's been really interesting to compare and contrast, right? Because, like, prior to this, I never had any really good experience with that. But so now it's interesting to look at Azure world, AWS world, because, like, the reality is that's a lot of organizations. Some organizations pick and they're 100% one thing or the other, but for a lot, it's kind of like a mess, and it's just happened that way. And sometimes you choose best of breed, and, like, sometimes you're on a journey, and it is what it is, right? Especially, I think now, like, around communications. So, like, we're very focused on, like, communications, contact experiences and stuff like that, and, like, modern workplace and all that stuff. And what's been really interesting post-pandemic, I think a lot of big companies are kind of a little bit wrong-footed right now, because if you go back, say, 3-5 years, you'd be all right with Microsoft Teams on the back end, which is what you use internally, and that's, everyone's using Teams, that's great. And then you've got a contact center with a PSTN line, maybe a bit of, like, chat going on, and that's fine too. And, like, those two worlds are mostly kind of separated, and they do a bit in the middle, right? But now I think you've got companies have to be way more open, way more flexible, way more communicative, because that's what people expect now. We've been through this pandemic. It's like, well, everyone can do video calls now, and everyone can do chat, and everyone wants to do those online, and nobody is, like, prepared to sit on a phone line for 30 minutes anymore. It's like, we're not doing that anymore. you know?
No, that's where this is all at though, right? Like the
Mm.
customer experience. Like how do you make that customer experience as seamless as I don't want to say as self-service as possible, but there are a lot of there's a lot of people looking for self-service that's just not available today, or it's not readily available in your business environment today.
Yeah, it's two things, right? It's a self-service of like, I will deal with a bot. I'd prefer to deal with a bot because if it's a good bot and it can get me there, it will be quicker and it'll be like quicker experience. But if it can't, then I want to talk to somebody quickly, and I want that person to be able to not have to start again. You know, continue where I like see my history. I don't want to have to start again every time I call, and maybe I say call, but maybe actually sometimes it's a video call. Like a lot of consumables, like consumer IT hardware, like printers and all that sort of stuff, like webcams, all that sort of stuff, fridges, freezers, washing machines, all that kind of stuff. The video call could be so helpful, rather than just like trying to explain it all on the phone. Like that should be possible. I should be able to start my call on a PSTN, jump up to a video, jump down to chat, like whatever it is, over the course of a couple of days if I need to, and that should be a seamless experience. As should, sorry, I'm going to stop.
No, go finish up.
As should agents being able to reach back into the company to find experts. Like everyone in the company should be reachable. You know, it doesn't matter if you don't work in the contact center. If you're the person that is the right person to answer this very specific question about this very particular type of insurance or this very particular model of washing machine, whatever it is, like there needs to be a really easy way for that agent just to reach in, because the alternative is like what you create a ticket, it goes in the system, and like that's all money, that's all cost. If you can do it, if you can solve those things on first call, you save the company a bunch of money as well.
Well, I'm going to pick up on something you just said there. That was I love this sort of not policy, but idea. Everyone in the company should be reachable. I just typed it in our messages because I believe in the same thing. Everyone should be reachable. And in fact, you talked about the contact center being able to see some video. I think every contact center should be a video enabled contact center, right? It should. I think there's a lot of cases, exactly what you talked about, whether it's parts or, if there's something physical that we're doing, or, being able to show somebody, even from a sales perspective, think about a consultation with maybe it's Botox that I'm going in for, and to be able to be on my mobile and go, yeah, here's what I'm talking about. It's like, I'd like to get rid of this and that and this, whatever it is. But that's a great experience for a customer. That's a great customer experience.
Yeah. And I can hear a million knowledge workers now saying like, I don't want to be contactable all the time. But the point is, you are contactable once for that question, because what's sitting behind that is an intelligent bot engine. It's like, here's the question, we don't have a good answer for it. Give me a model answer. You'll never hear from me again about this. And actually, as a knowledge worker, that's what you want, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Brandon, what do you have to say about it, Brandon? You were gonna hop in there.
I was chuckling just because you said Botox. I'm like, I'm gonna go off tracks for a second, but the world should know Rick Garcia's off to Europe. Here, is it next week? This weekend?
Tomorrow I'm off to Paris.
Yeah. So I'm thinking, I guess I know what's on his mind. He's got to go get his Botox shots before he heads out.
But you can't do that right there. If I had Botox, right? You see that?
just hold that and ask for that, and like we're done.
But I did have an actual thought around the language model and the bots. Is there's been, for me personally, like in my personal life, there's been times where I'm running into an issue with something. Let's say it's an error that I'm getting on a website that I'm trying, like a portal I'm trying to log into, and there's some error code, and Microsoft is notorious for this. Hey, please here's the code. Now please open a ticket and give us the code so we can tell you what's wrong. And imagining a day where I can just drop a screenshot of that right into the chat bot, or even the chat bot can say, hey, I'd like to take a screenshot. Will you allow me to do this? And immediately I've got a solution at my fingertips, instead of, again, picking on Microsoft, where I open this ticket, I give them the error code, and now I wait for 24 or 48 hours for them to maybe come back and say, hey, here's your problem.
Right. Because there's a product manager in Microsoft somewhere that is responsible for that page you're seeing and would love to hear from you, like in that moment. So having the bot to be like, I see your screenshot, I know what project that is, I know who's responsible, I'll just like pull out the error code, I'll send them a message. We're done.
I can confirm that that's exactly what could happen and should happen, because I spent 2 days tracking down somebody in Microsoft that I needed to speak with regarding a particular program. And I did find them, and we did have a real live video conversation to walk through what it was I was looking for.
That's
but
the
it
thing,
took
right?
me,
When you
it took me
find the
2
right
days.
person, when you find the right person, they really want to hear from you, because like it's tough to make those connections. Absolutely.
Interesting. All right. So we've got chatbots. That's a huge part of the customer experience in the near future. Question for you. This is just a hypothetical or kind of futuristic sort of guess here, right? Do you think our spend as consumers, when customer experience is so good, is going to be less because we're getting what we need the first time, or is it going to be more because it feels so good to buy because it's always a good experience? What do you think?
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? I think
it's more.
Yeah,
I look at Amazon, it's
yeah.
more.
Yeah,
You
or
you
Apple
give someone
for,
a
like,
you give someone a white glove treatment experience, they're gonna keep spending money with you.
Huh. Yeah. All right.
That's just my opinion.
Well,
Take it or leave it.
Yeah, like you're right. Like if you have a good experience somewhere, you stick with it, don't you?
And you're gonna refer you're gonna refer a friend
Yeah.
to it. Like, hey, I just bought such and such from this company. You should go check them out. Right? Referral is word of mouth is the best referral, and experience is what drives referral.
I know this is Everything Teams Phone Line, but since we just talked about Amazon for a hot second, the return process for Amazon, when I ordered some BCAAs, and they're in the container arrived kind of smashed, and the powder was everywhere in the container. I literally just kind of there was a bot. It was automated. They said, "Here's this. What are you returning? I'm returning this. Great. There's another one on its way. Catch you later." Like it was like a 2-minute process, all automated.
Their algorithm is solid, because like every time I've done the same thing, right? But their algorithm has something in it where like it seems to like just line up with my thinking as well, because I'll get something, I'm like, I'm not even sure, this is not even really worth doing the return, right? Because it's such a hassle, and I'll do it anyway, and they'll be like, you're right, it's not worth it, keep it, throw it away, have the money. Like it's not worth it to us either.
We're sending you another one.
Right.
It was crazy. That was a good experience. For such a big organization, that the granular experience of returning someone that you would often think is going to be a difficult process, it would turn out to be a really simple process. I use the same example for Expedia, so high five to them as well. I needed to extend a reservation for a hotel, and I go back in. Expedia is like, here's the bot, and what do you want to do? Here's my reservation. I want to extend it to Friday and Saturday, so I need to extend it a day. Hold on, circle. So just to make sure I've got this right, you want to extend your day to this day and check out on this day. Yes, exactly. Great. Hold on, circle. Great, your reservation's been changed. You're all set. I'm like, wow, it was probably 2 minutes worth of typing and just waiting for a couple of seconds, and my reservation was changed. I thought it was going to be a phone call to the property, look up my reservation manually, extend. I thought it was gonna be a massive process, and it wasn't. It was actually a really good experience.
It's weird, isn't it, how little things make, like, we're going completely off topic again, but like little things make a big difference. There's a clothing chain here, shout out to Next, that our family use for like a lot of basics. They're kind of like the old Navy of the UK or something, like, but they like when you buy stuff off mail order, like, and it arrives, every single item, in fact this is true in the shop store, every single item of clothing has a unique barcode. And I think it's to do with fraud, of like people stealing stuff and trying to return it. But what it means is, if you want to return it, you can go into store and there's like a big bin, you scan it, you drop it in the bin, and that's all you do, and you walk away. And they're like,
wow,
oh, we know exactly who this belongs to, and like we'll just credit the account,
That's amazing.
Yeah,
like that's what a great concept.
Screen, like you confirm it's you and you're done. Like
Let me just say that Zara needs to do that, because I've been in a long queue with my fiance at Zara, and it's just like, I'm like, why even? Anyway, I'm not even gonna get into it.
It's so good. It's like, boop, boop, you do the first one. And it's like, is this you? And it's like, it's my wife's name. I'm like, yes. And it's like, boop, bin A. Like, boom. So like,
that's amazing. Yeah. Okay, so that brings us into automation. I mean, there's so much from an automation perspective that can be achieved. What's kind of the low hanging fruit within the Teams ecosystem for automation? What do you think is?
I mean, there's so many, like there's the stuff around bots, and there's automation. That bots can be for more than just looking up information, right? They can be for doing things. So if you can hook them up to your back end systems around HR, or like, doing things like that, business process things. I think this call automation is really interesting. There's a whole area of Azure Communication Services and how that works with Teams, so you can automate like the phone call process, so IVRs and all the rest of it. Like, and that's a really big, comes back to customer experience again, right? Like, it's making that better as well. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do there. We have had a thing in Teams for ages called messaging extensions, which are kind of, I think, a bit of an unsung hero, but they're about to get like their time in the sun, or whatever whatever the phrase is, because like, yes, you've been able to use them in Teams as a way to kind of pop up information and put it into the chat. Then they've come over to Outlook and 365 a little bit, but they're going to be the basis for how you interact with third-party systems in Copilot as well. So if you've already built messaging extensions, you are going to have a great time in the next 6 months. If you haven't, now's probably the time, because your messaging extensions in Teams are going to be compatible with Copilot. They're going to almost just work. Like, you're going to have to do stuff on the manifest to tell Copilot that you want that to happen. But yes, Copilot is going to know about your thing and just invoke that same task module that it would for a messaging extension, which I think is such a smart move from Microsoft, actually. Yeah.
I'm going to need an example, Tom. You're going to have to break this down into an example for me.
Yeah, I mean, so you might have, like, I don't know, say you're a massive enterprise thing and you book all your travel like through some internal system, right? So you might have a messaging extension, you're talking with your boss or whatever, and you want to send him some detail, or him or her, you want to send them some details of some flight booking thing you want approval of, whatever it is, right? So old days, you'd alt tab away to your thing, like you'd hope that you'd either take a screen grab, or you'd hope there's some way of like copying it and you put it in the chat or email or whatever, have them look at it. Kind of fast forward a couple of years ago, Teams messaging extensions. So down at the bottom where you write your message, where the bit where you like choose your GIFs and your animations and all the emojis, like, you can put stuff down there as a developer, right? So down there could be my company's HR thing or my travel thing, right? So I click on the travel thing, and it knows me, so it pops up like upcoming travel maybe, and like I pick the thing, and it forms a really nice looking adaptive card. So it's not just text; it's got like a little picture of where I'm going, maybe, or the flight path, or it's got all the codes. It's like whatever, and that's the thing that goes in the chat to the manager. And there's a button in there the manager can click approve. It goes all the way back, and nobody has to leave Teams, right? So that's where we are now. 6 months time, 12 months time, whatever it looks like, when those extensions make it into Copilot, I can be having a talk with my boss, and I can say, hey, do you mind approving my flight next month? And the Copilot will be like, oh, sounds like you want to approve the flight. And it'll just be like, this one, yep, fine, and put it in for me. I won't even have to know that the extension exists.
That's cool.
Because like at the moment, extensions and apps in general in Teams, I think, have something of a discoverability problem with users, and Microsoft are trying everything they can to try and make that better. Bring them to Outlook, making them more visible. They're actually going to start. This was on my update last week. They're actually going to start allowing some apps to be auto-installed for users. Like, this is *** disclaimer, like, admins have to okay this. Like, it's not Microsoft pushing out apps. This is admins saying it's okay to auto install apps, but they're going to do it in a really smart way, actually. So for instance, if you've got I don't know, let's say a third party thing, like I don't know, pick someone like Twilio or something like that, right? There is a Twilio app, you might not know about it, but Microsoft know that you use Twilio if you sign in using SSO, like using your AD account, your work account. So if your admin says, yep, it's fine, like auto install Twilio for the right people, Microsoft, like Teams, will automatically install it on those people where it knows they've already signed in off platform. It's like, hey, we know you use Twilio, you'd probably like the Twilio app, which is kind of either creepy or smart depending on where you land. But like it's admin led, so it's
I think super smart. Go ahead, Brandon. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think in an organization that knows what their requirements are, it's really intelligent. Like, I look at even our organization, where it would be nice to, as you're talking through this scenario, it'd be really nice to go automatically connect that messaging extension for, say, our CRM, so that, like, when I ping, one of Garcia's salespeople asking a question about, hey, where are we at with this deal? Because my engineers need to know X. It can go out and look at our CRM and say, hey, are you talking about this, with Copilot? And I can immediately put that card in, for, even if it's just for reference, to say, hey, here's the deal that I'm referring to.
Here's the information about it. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Huh. I like the approach of installing apps because there is a discoverability problem. In fact, Brandon and I were talking about this earlier before the show. How last quarter, I think Microsoft rolled out and said there's 1,900 apps in the App Store, and you wouldn't know it. Like a normal person that is a part of an organization wouldn't know that there's 1,900 productivity apps sitting in Microsoft Teams, right? And now, Brandon, what's that number up to? We talked about that a bit earlier.
It's like 22 or 2,300. So I mean, it's you can see it's there. There's new apps. Essentially, there's a couple apps a day being added.
Yeah, so that ecosystem is growing and growing, and what you're seeing is now that Teams is going to be that centralized business hub, right? It's no longer just communicating. It's all about communication, but it's really it's bringing everything into the ecosystem so that a business can operate not just in Teams, but you can operate within whatever you're going to operate in, third-party applications, but be in the Teams interface. It's the new Windows, yeah.
I think like it's interesting to watch from the outside. Like if you care about this stuff, because you're right. Like it's really interesting and exciting for us and like the benefits it will give us. It's going to be really interesting how that lands in like 12 months time, because you're going to end up with these different, because the natural end game of this is Copilot, right? And you're talking to Copilot, it knows about what you're doing in Microsoft 365, it knows about what you're doing in Teams, it knows all your extensions, you're having a natural conversation with Copilot. But in some ways, yes, everything's happening in Teams, but also it's kind of like, because of all these extensions, it's also happening kind of outside Teams as well. And so it'll be fascinating actually to see what happens with the Microsoft 365 Copilot versus the Windows Copilot and these other, Microsoft famously put teams up against each other internally to see who wins, because you end up with a better product. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, because we only need one Copilot, and we probably only really want one Copilot, but we've got to get there by step, by degrees, because it's early days,
See who wins.
Yeah. One thing I'll say, Tom, this is just more from recent experience, and not because we use it, just because I was curious and was exploring it. But even seeing the M365 ecosystem evolving, and the example is I started playing around with Dynamics 365. And more specifically, the Teams integration, so that now I can live in Dynamics 365 and consume my Teams chat and calling right within that. And while I was doing this, right in the middle of it, I'm working with Microsoft to get into the early access program. And right in the middle of me playing around with it, Copilot finally activated for me. And watching what Copilot can do in that environment from a CRM perspective with Teams integrated. Now I'm consuming Teams outside of the Teams desktop client, but still all the native Teams experience inside of Dynamics. And on top of that, watching Copilot perform. Like I take an inbound call and Copilot immediately is there on my screen to summarize everything about the inbound caller. Hey, he's got this opportunity, he's got these tickets, here's things that he's working on, here's things you might need to know, here's links, here's all this different stuff. And here's a chat channel regarding it. You might want to, engage this chat channel. It's almost mind-blowing how intuitive it is without having any prior interaction with Copilot. Like I'd never seen Copilot besides videos. And all of a sudden Copilot shows up and I was just like, wow, this is so stupid simple. I didn't have to do anything. It just started working for me.
Yeah. That's really cool to hear, because that's how it should be, right? And it's interesting as well, how useful that Teams in other places thing is, having access to that Teams experience in Dynamics. Interest that the way that works is with Azure Communication Services, so that's available to everyone. So you could, as a developer, you could go and build your own website or put it into a third-party system and have that Teams experience in any app as well, which is kind of really interesting as well. It's not just about bringing stuff into Teams; it's about Teams being able to live in different places.
Yeah, and
go ahead.
I was going to say back to kind of the whole AI chatbot thing. Then obviously that led me to go check out the virtual agents with Microsoft, because now I had access to Copilot within that environment. And again, we've already talked about this on another show, but to just iterate, I'm a MacGyver when it comes to any kind of code, right? I'll hack it, I'll fake it till I make it, so to speak. And being able to go into this chatbot, this virtual agent chatbot setup within Microsoft and use Copilot to literally say, here's my use case for this chatbot. I want the user to be able to make these decisions, and I want this flow. And Copilot went and created that virtual agent for me. Just boom, instantly.
Just so we're very clear, it was a virtual agent to onboard Operator Connect customers. So if you are a customer, or if you're looking for Operator Connect, I've got a bot for you.
It's not live.
Yeah, that's interesting.
What was interesting here's an interesting sort of forecast for you guys. True or false here. So Jamie Dimon, who's the CEO of Chase Bank, said in the future, employees are going to work 3.5 days and live to be 100 years old. What do you think about that?
Can we start that today? All right.
Stop it.
Have a good weekend. See you guys.
Like and that was the result of AI and automation helping individuals that have specific knowledge that they can apply, right?
I hope so. Like, I mean, why not? Like, if AI, what I want to see is more of AI, like the AI breakthroughs being about removing the mundane work. Like, there's a lot of news focus and there's a lot of interest, and I get it, on creative AI. But actually, I want it the other way around. Like, I want AI to do the boring, mundane stuff so that we can focus on the interesting, creative stuff. You know?
There is so much mundane operational components of a business that could be automated that it is mind-blowing to think about when you remove that from an organization, how productive, how not ingenious, but how creative that organization could become at delivering services, products, whatever it may be, because it is all about process. It's all about, building a business, as an example, is all about repetitive process, right, Brandon? It's a simple, repeatable processes. And if you can go and create ways to automate those simple, repeatable processes, then you can spend more and more of your time doing exactly what you said, Tom, which is focusing on the creative, focusing on the human portion of it, the touch, right? The engagement, not the engagement that can be automated too, but like focusing on that. And that would be interesting to see how businesses could accelerate their growth.
You see that in like a microcosm. You see that I've seen it now, like post pandemic, as conferences have come back. Weirdly, as like a weird segue, but like as conferences have come back, like in-person conferences. Like I joked the other day, like a thing on a call, like I think I figured out why we like going to in-person conferences. And it's like we tell everyone back at the office, and we tell our families that like it's the in-person, the networking is really important, the face-to-face. It's like, really? Because we're all introverts, right? We're all like in IT. I don't think it's that at all. I think when we're at an in-person conference, we legitimately cannot be like disturbed. Like we
can't be
don't
anywhere
get
else.
Interrupted. It's not like online conferences. Who in like what business ever respects those in calendars, right? It just doesn't happen, right? For once in our lives, we can concentrate on one thing and think creatively about it, because it's not like we're not trying to multitask a bazillion things all the time. And I think that's why people go to conferences.
That is a great sort of discussion point, because it is. I was literally signing up for Ignite yesterday, for Microsoft Ignite, and there's two options. It's in person or virtual, right? The in person is pricey, and then the virtual is free. Which one do you want to attend? Well, what are you going to get the most out of? I'm like, it's going to be the in person, right? I'd rather be in person. I'd rather be focused and engaged on what it is I can absorb at the moment, right? Versus being at my desk doing 20 other things. Maybe
on in the background,
maybe paying attention. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's a interesting point. But automation, what tools are available today in Microsoft that are simple ones? And I'm alluding to Power Automate as an example, or in the Power App ecosystem. What does Power Automate do for organizations?
Yeah, Power Automate's amazing, really, because like it tries to map some of those like tedious processes that people do every day, like that maybe could be automated, whether it's like downloading a file from over here, opening a spreadsheet, putting some rows in from this thing, looking this thing up, saving it as something else, moving it along, or being more reactionary. When this thing happens, go and do some other thing. Check this every 2 hours, and if something's not right, tell somebody about it. Like, it's very good for making those things happen, and it's easy to get going with, and it's going to get even easier because Copilot's come in there as well, right? So you can say what you want. I do actually interestingly think that probably, maybe, I don't know, we'll see. A lot of that Power Suite is probably going to be temporary. It's not going to last in the Copilot world because you don't need it. Like at the point at which you're telling Copilot to build your Power Automate flow or to build your Power App or to build your like whatever it is, like you don't need the thing in this middle anymore. You just need the Copilot. Like so, but we're probably 5 years away from that, right? So in the moment, it's still a useful tool, I think, for helping people do stuff. And but I think what would be really interesting though is the next iteration. Like I don't know this is happening because I don't know what the Power Automate team are doing. But what would be really interesting is some kind of like, we know that the graph underpins a lot of all of Microsoft 365. So there's all these signals from Microsoft 365, all your data, but also signals about activity, all goes into graph, right? There's a huge amount of knowledge in graph that Microsoft are only just starting to tap into. I think what would be fascinating would be graph coming to you and saying, hey, I think there's a flow here. Like I've seen what you do every day and I think I can do it with a flow. Can I show you? Can you sit with me? Can I do it? And you tell me where I'm doing it wrong, and we'll do that for a month, and then like I'll try again. I think that would be really interesting.
Exciting business world coming up. Like it's an exciting business world. Like again, I'm a business owner, so I sit here and go, oh, this is, where can you implement automation and eliminate mistakes or eliminate delays and create a better customer experience. And Brandon, I mean, we can give you an example, Tom. That's exactly what we were talking about earlier today, was creating a flow for POCs, right? Let's create a flow in Power Automate and Microsoft and have it tied to our HubSpot and all these different components, so that the customer has a much better experience and the transfer of information happens as it needs to happen, and information is available to everyone that needs to know, right? So it's pretty exciting to think about what future businesses have from a productivity perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. As much as in some ways it's about abstracting. Like you never want the customer to feel the pain of your small business, because we know every small bit. Like, yes, I work with small businesses and big businesses, and small businesses is just like, yes, there's a million different systems because that's how it, you haven't reached that point yet where you go through the massive, like, right, we just sign up to the 3 big ones and we're done, because we can't, like, you can't afford that. Like you're using like half a dozen to 10, like whatever, all these different systems, and they don't really talk to each other very well. But you never want to expose that to your customer, right? To your like it's the swan thing on top. It's like, and the feet underneath, and I think automation really helps with that because it ties all that stuff together seamlessly. So you, as you say, you have your flow for like, right, we're doing this thing now. So on the back end, everything just like like is done right, is done once, and it's
That's amazing.
Yeah, I agree.
Brandon, what do you think, Brandon?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately for me, it's exciting to see this, but I think for the consumer and the business, I think the important takeaway is, how much time and efficiency is going to be gained back by looking at it. And it may sound intimidating, but at the end of the day, being willing to roll those sleeves up, so to speak, and dive in and really find that partner if you need to work with, so that you can start realizing these gains that you're going to get out of it. It's just, as I explore with it and play with it a little bit, it's mind blowing how like you just immediately start seeing all the use cases for your business where you're like, oh man, I could do this. Oh man, I could do that. I mean, I've talked about this before. One simple one that I did is I hate voicemails. I went and automated my voicemails completely away. I'm like, just send me a Teams chat on the transcript. Tell me what you said. I'll read it if I want, but I don't want to ever dial into my phone to check my voicemail. I don't want it. And that's just one really, I'm going to say, stupid example of a million different ways that you can now open up a business to. It might be one user that goes, man, my life would be easier if I could automate these tasks, versus the next user who goes, oh, I don't care about those tasks, but I want these tasks automated. And that's the thing Copilot's going to bring, is this custom automation. I think this is just my prediction, where it's no longer like as running a development team. What you're trying to do is you're trying to automate a flow that pleases all people, right? For a particular workflow, versus Copilot's going, hey, I'm now going to bring this dynamic to your business that it's on a per user, per identity basis.
Yeah, I think it's a huge competitive advantage, you know. And if you're not doing it, somebody else is, and they will come up behind you and overtake you. And like I think that's just reality. And I think as well, I wouldn't necessarily assume like, because sometimes like this conversation sometimes goes into like, well, I wouldn't want to give that to my users because like I'm going to take away all the work they're doing, and then
Right.
like we're going to all that kind of stuff around like what people do and jobs and the rest of it. But actually, I would have that conversation with them, because actually I think you might be surprised. Like, I'm always surprised. There's stuff they don't want to be doing, and there is stuff that they do want to be doing that they can't. And so lean into that and like have honest conversations with them. And it doesn't always have to be about like, hey, we're going to automate everything about your job and then goodbye. It's more like, what don't you like doing? What don't you want to do? What do you want to do? And go from there, I think.
You know, you tap into their passion or tap into their motivation on delivering something that they could be passionate about that helps your business, right? So that's
exactly.
That's pretty exciting. That's pretty exciting. What about ACS, Tom? We haven't talked about ACS in a little while. Are there some changes happening with ACS?
I mean, so ACS is a big thing. Like I say, it powers Teams. It powers all of that Dynamics, omni-channel, voice, video stuff like you've been playing with, Brandon. It powers LinkedIn Video. Like it's a big voice over IP platform. It also does SMS and emails, send and receive at scale. What's interesting and new in ACS for me is call automation, which is in public preview now, which is you can write code against a phone number. So you can have a PSTN number in ACS, and when people call it, it runs your code. And the way they've done that is nice as well. So back in the old days, like I'm old, so I remember UCMA, which was the automation technology in Skype for Business that you used to have if you wanted to have a server answer a phone call. And like you used to have to write quite a lot of code there for doing the setup, the registration setup and all that sort of stuff. What they've done with ACS is hooked it into Azure Event Grid. So what that means is you set up your Azure Communication Services, you buy a phone number through them, and then you create a subscription. And the subscription can be, when an incoming call happens, run this Azure function. And that's what you do. And then in your Azure function, like your first decision is, do I answer this or do I reject it? And that's up to you. And if you answer it, you can pass it off to another Azure function. And then that Azure function will just get notified on that call, like for everything that happens, the call being received, somebody being added, DTMF tones, speech being recognized. So 2 new things in public preview now are text to speech and speech recognition. Okay, you just get those through in like it just like calls your Azure function just again. So you imagine this Azure function is like got a ginormous like switch statement in it for like all these different things that might happen and whatever you want to do with it. And then the Azure function runs. So each time it runs like half a second or something, and then it just gets like invocated as all these things happen. So it's super scalable. Like it's perfect for like PSTI and like customer care numbers around like holiday season and stuff like that, because it's an Azure function. It will just scale out. There's no servers to worry about. But it's very powerful because you can do that text to speech, you can do speech recognition, you can play audio, and new thing, you can transfer to users in Microsoft Teams. So there's your like link back into an agent, back into an expert, whatever it is.
That's like, to me, that's like we're launching, Brandon. You don't know this just yet because Tom just mentioned it and I just latched onto it. But here we go. We're launching like surveys, right? Like automated surveys for organizations, for customer support or customer service or sale, whatever it is, right? Whatever engagement. But essentially, if you've got a number here, you could either transfer that number, and if it's doing speech to text, text to speech, you can give it a list of questions as an example, have it ask the questions, translate that, deliver that text to somebody else or something, go through that text even with Copilot and figure out here's positive, here's negative. You've got 13 happy customers and you've got, two not so happy customers. And these are your surveys that you run. That's fantastic. We're deploying that.
What I just heard is you just told me I need to go deploy direct routing for ACS and get this set up for you. That's what I just heard.
That's pretty much exactly what I like. You know how to translate my speech.
So much for 3.5 work days a week.
That's right. That's right. How useful is that though for an organization? I mean, that's completely useful. That's to me, that's a practical tool right now, right? Whether it's again, the survey is a really key component of measurement for customers or companies and how they're serving their customer, right?
Absolutely.
And so being able
yeah.
being able to launch that I'm not going to say that simply. It takes a lot of work, everyone. It takes a lot. It's very expensive and takes a lot of work. So, but being able to have the infrastructure to launch something like that for an organization, that's super big. Anyway.
It is. I think absolutely, and that's a great scenario, that outbound scenario for like surveys, or just like inbound for surveys. Why not?
Yeah.
But yeah, like you can completely imagine like some kind of Copilot large language model in front of that, trying to answer the question, handing it off to an agent. If not, absolutely. And actually, the technology is sufficiently there, like that. This, like, we're talking Microsoft terms because that's kind of our world, but actually there's good crossover with these other contact centers as well now. It's much less adversarial, I think, in this space than it ever used to be. It's much more about experiences and about good customer experiences.
Good segue then. I've got a question for you. What is your favorite, outside of Teams, obviously, what is your favorite sort of platform that you've been sort of working on, and is it compatible with what you do? And in that compatibility, have you go, man, this is a really interesting use case?
Yeah. So I think what's really interesting about the stuff I've been learning from my AWS colleagues is Amazon Connect, because that's a ready to go contact center, in the way that kind of Azure doesn't really have an equivalent there with a ready to go contact center. It's got all the pieces, don't get me wrong. And like Microsoft Digital Contact Center is a thing. But it's not a click and done SKU like that. You just Amazon Connect, you can spend half an hour with and have a legit contact center working. And then you can spend the rest of your life and the rest of your money customizing it and tweaking it to get it exactly right. But if you're an SME and that all you want is the fairly basic requirement, you're in a good place. But also it's not so much about my contact center is better than your contact center or anything. It's more where are we? Where we're at is that lots of enterprises have Amazon Connect right now, and so that's where they're going to stay unless something really disruptive comes along. So how do we meet them where they're at? Because a lot of organizations we talk to certainly have Microsoft Teams on the back end, and they love it for their internal communications. They absolutely love it for their meetings. They love it for their knowledge workers, and they're getting real benefit from the collaboration platform there. And they don't want to walk away from it. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, and Tom, I think what I was going to say is I know from our perspective, we get asked all the time from our customer base about basic contact center functionality within the Teams phone system, and I think Microsoft is making some strides towards that functionality. Like we look at what's in sort of preview mode right now with the Barge Whisper features coming out, and the ability to control time of day routing and whatnot.
They're definitely racing. They're definitely racing to get there for sure. So this is going to be a different conversation in 3 years' time.
I totally agree.
Yeah, but you've got these big enterprises that love Teams, but they're already using Connect on the front end. And I think they're wrong. A lot of all these organizations are this kind of wrong-footed, like I said earlier, where they've got the contact center with the PSTN, and that's been the old world. But now they need to make that much more communicative. They make much more responsive with their back office. So what do you do when you've got Amazon Connect out there and you've got Teams in here, and there's a big wall between these two, and how do you break down that wall? And that's where we've been spending a lot of R&D time figuring out okay, we can do this. We have a solution for breaking down that wall. And that's interesting because it means that you don't have to make big technical decisions based on provider or whatever. You can be well, I like this thing over here and I like this thing over here. Let's just make them play together and make the technology get out of the way and focus on experience. Sorry.
And I was going to say, Tom, you probably know better than a lot of people that's always been, again, my opinion coming from contact center background, that's always been one of the biggest challenges of contact center and back office, right? Is that gap or that wall, as you called it, between the contact center and how do I get a hold of and connect to those knowledge workers that sit behind me that I need help from.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And so that's what we're kind of really focusing on at the moment. Is it's one of the things we're focusing on at the moment. It's one thing I'm quite passionate about at the moment is how do we do that? How do we empower those agents who use Teams and are having internal conversations with Teams, but they're on phone with a
Mhm.
client who came in over PSTN or came in over web chat or whatever, and all they want to do is take that expert that they're chatting with and drop them into the conversation for 5 minutes, an hour again, and done. You know,
What's the coolest flow that you're working on now, Tom? Like what have you either developed or are working on where you go, this is a call comes in, we answer it here, we do this here, and then we take it over here. And what's something that's
yeah.
simple and easy to understand?
So okay, so this is kind of crossed a couple of different things, but like we have like this end-to-end demo thing where customer calls in over PSTN, it lands in Amazon Connect because that's where they're at, but it's being real-time transcribed to the agent. But as it's being real transcribed to the agent, it's pulling out the problem, it's pulling out the things, it's cross-referencing the data in Microsoft 365 and in Delve, figuring out the right person, starting a side conversation in chat that's got the agent in it as well, getting the expert there to be like, we think you're the right person because blah 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 happened in the conversation 2 seconds ago. Like, you know, are you the right person? Can we bring you in? Bringing them in on Teams into that conversation, and then either like bring them straight into the conversation, or just having them converse with the agent, having them quickly like make notes, having ChatGPT turn that into a thing that an agent can say and be confident in saying, because that's another thing. Like this, a lot of these problems that we're solving, and sorry to go on a tangent again, are kind of non-technical. You know, where you've got an agent who needs to be super confident before they will just take a bunch of like bullet point notes from an expert and deliver it, right? But actually, for all its faults, Copilot can really help with that, because they'll take the bullet point, they'll turn it into like 5 lines, they'll put it in front of the expert to be like, I feel like this is what you wanted to say, and they're like, yep, fine, I just couldn't be bothered to type it all. Present it to the agent like, this is signed off by the expert, you can read this out and sound like you know what you're talking about and have the confidence to do it. It's all about first call resolution, like honestly, like that's where if you're boiling down all the like the reasons for doing all this stuff, like for good or bad, it comes down to money, right? And if you can solve tickets on first resolution before they go into the ticketing system, you save a ton of money. Once they're in the ticketing system, it's all money. After that, it's all cost. Like, yeah.
I love it. I love it. Tom, your prediction for Microsoft Teams Phone. Like right now we're sitting at what, 20 million subscribers, or 20, somewhere around 20 million, just shy of 20 million maybe, users or PSTN licenses out there. What do you think this is going to scale to in the next, I don't know, 3 years?
I don't know actually, because I think I've got a longer term thing about where's phone going, you know, and you know what I mean?
Oh, like, lay it out, because I'm curious, because Bill Gates said we're not going to be using phone numbers a while back, right? Do you remember that?
It's one of those, like, you know what I mean? Those crossover paths, right? Teams Phone, 100%, it's going to grow and grow as they just add more capabilities, more countries, more provision, and all the rest of it. And they're just going to squeeze, like they're just going to become more and more competitive over time as they build out the infrastructure. But it's at some point, like globally, I think phone numbers are going to decline as some of this stuff comes on board. Like as we realize that actually I don't need to pick up the phone to call my bank. I can start with the web chat. I can go to video, and I can be done.
It should be just a direct connect, right? It should be just a direct connect from the website. If you're gonna, because I mean, I start all my searches for Dick's Sporting Goods. Brandon, I'm gonna use it for down the street. It's like if I want to call Dick's Sporting Goods as an example, or I want to engage with Dick's Sporting Goods, I mean, you go to the website, or I start on the website, I Google it, and I start from there. I start from Google, I start from the website, and then what do? I either dial the number up, or there's no way to engage with them just yet. Maybe there's a chat on there. I haven't looked that much at it, but ultimately it'd be nice just to connect right there into that organization and engage with what you said earlier. Anyone in the organization that can tell me about the New Balance 327s and what colors they may have on the shelf.
Yeah. I mean, I've just thought I should not do this. I'm going to get told off for this. Should I do it? I don't know.
You totally should do it. Go.
It's fine. They won't. I'm sure they're not watching this. I'm going to get told off for like ideating what is probably quite a good idea in public, and not keeping it to ourselves. Like, what would be great would be I start off on a web chat, like just like you're saying, like you're asking some questions, like you get through to an agent, blah blah blah, asking some questions, and then it gets to the point. It's like, this is just too complicated to do over time. I just want to pick up the call. But if you pick up the line now and dial like Dick's Sporting Goods customer care, you're going to go through a completely different person. You don't want to start that conversation again. What I want to do is like phone this number and put in this number afterwards when prompted, and like I'll get through to somebody who also sees the thing that just happened. It's like, get me through to this instance of this support ticket, as a phone number. But
That's exactly how it should work, right? It's exactly how it should work. It's like you start off with the chat, you get to a point where you can't engage any further, or there's something that you just need to talk to somebody about, and you should be able just to resolve that chat into someone who's got the access to see everything that's just happened and deliver that live conversation.
We've done it with video, but we haven't done it with PSTN. So we do that thing with video. Like we can send you an SMS message and then you can carry on the conversation in video because we send you a link to like ACS.
Yeah.
But we haven't done it for phone.
I think it's important to capture the call only because right now, today, you've got, however many, tens of millions of contact center workers that are not equipped for video today. Right. Yet if you could take advantage of what's deployed and what's capable, then you could roll this in and have people sort of available now and experience this sort of better customer experience now versus waiting for everybody to be video enabled.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Like there's some interesting cases where like you could really make use of your staff. So like the washing machine thing of like, I'm not sure whether I want this washing machine or that washing machine. I want somebody to know the difference. And I go and start my web chat and it goes to the call center and they're like, yeah, you do need somebody who knows the difference. But hang on, like, we have locations all over the US or the UK. There's somebody in somewhere in the middle of nowhere who's not serving any customers right now, and I know he's got 2 of those machines in stock. I'm going to put you through on a video call on the shop floor. He's not doing anything else, or she's not doing anything else. They can talk to you. That's amazing, right? Like
that would be really
staff. It's a great customer experience. It doesn't matter that you are nowhere near where that shop is, but like go visit that shop, go look at it.
Applied knowledge, right? If you can have someone that's got knowledge that they can apply to your organization or your thing that you need at that very moment and only for that moment. You do make use of the organization headcount and tools and resources. That's a exciting future for businesses, contact centers, and just consumers, right? From what it's going to be like in the future to communicate and get customer support. That's pretty cool. Okay, we hit top of the hour. Look, it just went just like that. We covered ACS. We covered Power Automate. We covered the Graph API a bit. We covered bots. We covered so much information here. Tom, you're a wealth of information. It's always exciting to talk to you because you do have the latest and greatest of what's happening. So thank you for taking your 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. hour in the UK and hopping on Everything Teams Phone Live with us. So with that said, Brandon, why don't you close us out? The outro, buddy.
Yeah, I was 2 things. I was going to say, maybe we bring you back because you just literally we're at the top of the hour and you opened the door wide open for augmented reality discussion as how that fits into this whole thing. And
you need to talk to Basil Overman about that. Like maybe him and me will come on and we'll just
we'll talk offline about that. And then the last piece is I don't know if I assume you're planning to be on at the Cavell Engage in November. I've booked my flight. Garcia, I don't think has, so I'll see you there, Garcia.
I'm in. It's Cavell Enable. It's November 28th, and there's also a UCX something or other in London at that point.
We're going to be at
we'll be at that as well.
So we'll be there as well.
Oh, perfect. We have a bright pink stand apparently, which is I'm not sure if I'm on board with it or not, but it's distinctive. So
it makes you stand out. On that note, good. Tom, appreciate your time and wealth of knowledge, and looking forward to catching up to you in about 6 or 7 weeks.
See you, everyone.
Thanks very much.
All right, there you go, Tom.